Sam, don't you reckon loot boxes are so 2017?
So 2017. What else was cool in 2017? I'm trying to think now.
You know, if I could control rewind, I would want it to be an actual rewind.
Rewind time, everybody.
See your girl in the park. That girl is a uckers.
Did it feel good though?
I'll have number 9.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her.
Hey, Vsauce.
What a fucking...
How about that?
Loot boxes, we thought they were all done and dusted. They're old news. You don't see meme channels and clickbaity drama news channels riding the whole loot box
No opening
train
memes anymore with big loot box things.
Correct. We've all moved on, but you know who hasn't moved on? Congress. Because Congress are always a few years behind everybody else.
They're getting hip though, people, okay? They're getting hip to the whole
They
loot
are.
box thing.
I'm with it. I'm hip.
Rewind time, everybody.
They've decided that, hey, maybe these loot box things that people keep talking about, maybe there's a problem there. And now a Republican senator has decided to put a bill onto the floor of the US Congress that will basically ban loot boxes and pay-to-win mechanics in games marketed towards children. It's the biggest attack on pay-to-win mechanics and loot boxes we've ever seen anywhere in the world.
Apart from Reddit with Star Wars Battlefront 2.
That's true.
Maybe. But apart from that...
was pretty big.
Say your prayers!
EA. Round 1.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Fight!
So guys, it looks like, you know, Europe again, they're always creating trends, you know, they're the cool guys,
Europe.
you know? Yeah, because they were the ones that started the whole loot box thing. Belgium, Netherlands, they're banning this shit left, right, and center. Again, US is like, you know what, they look pretty cool.
Well,
Fashion's cool.
Let's be fair.
Cars
though.
are cool.
Let's be fair.
Loot box band's cool now.
There was old mate Chris Lee from Hawaii.
Chris
remember,
Lee, man.
Remember Chris Lee, Sam?
Oh, I remember that guy.
I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna let myself get absolutely soaking wet. It's a raining day, hallelujah, it's raining day.
Chris Lee is the Hawaiian senator who we spoke to a while ago. We actually interviewed him on the channel, actually. He's quite a mad lad. And we talked to him about his efforts to basically build a legislative framework for loot boxes and pay-to-win stuff. Ideally trying to, like, sort of, you know, ban it, because it sucks. And he was making great headway in that, but obviously things stalled and whatever else. Government takes a long time, and we hadn't really heard much.
I was going to say, he really started that kind of American movement in terms of people really started saying, oh, people in Congress or people in politics really do give a shit about this stuff.
And he was the one that stood up famously at a press conference and non-ironically said, it's a trap.
A Star Wars themed online casino.
Say the line!
Designed to lure kids into spending money. It's a trap.
Enter Republican Josh Hawley from the great state of Montana. And he has just...
is that Southern? I have no
it's
idea.
Midwest, right?
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah, Montana's Midwest. He basically put out he's going to put a bill onto the floor of Congress called, it's called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act, right? And the general gist of it is that it's going to protect kids from loot boxes, microtransactions that are predatory in nature, and also pay-to-win style microtransactions. The Federal Trade Commission, FTC, would be tasked with enforcing the ban, and state attorneys general would be empowered to file lawsuits against companies who violate the rules. Says he, social media and video games prey on user addiction, siphoning our kids' attention from the real world and extracting profits from fostering compulsive habits. Hawley, a former GOP Attorney General and one of the most outspoken Republican tech critics, said in a statement. No matter this business model's advantages to the tech industry, one thing is clear, there is no excuse for exploiting children through such practices.
Yeah, I think in that particular way, I think that's very black and white. In terms of monetizing games that have gambling with children involved.
Yes.
We've been saying that since the get-go. It's just, you know, it needs to be taken out entirely. But it gets a bit tricky, I think, when we actually talk about adults in this, because how are they going to really police that? That's my main question here. Like, what, are kids going to walk in and have to pick up a separate copy that doesn't have the whole, you know, gambling implementation?
Yeah.
Well, aren't a lot of people then just going to buy that game because that means they don't have to deal with this pay-to-win bullshit? And also, kids at home that buy it online, I mean, oh, I'm 18, promise, just, click on that certain button that says I'm 18. It's
like
hard
Leisure
to
Suit Larry.
Yeah.
A little quiz at the start. Who was the president in 1980? Mom, who was president in 1980? Yeah, there's lots of ways for kids to get around this sort of stuff. Even things, parental controls that you have, right, where... parents can control passwords and stuff. Kids figure that shit out, man. They're smart.
We're all 13, 14. We figured out how to get on the internet, people, okay?
Yeah,
we figured out all sorts of ways to look at content, okay?
That's right, all sorts of content.
All sorts of content, okay? All sorts of content. So it's very hard to know that, all this hard work that they might put forward, would it actually make the change? I think that's the next big thing. Like, would we actually see, if they were to ban loot boxes or ban pay to win from all children, would it make a difference?
Here's the thing, right? I think that, let's say, for example, EA. Now, EA is entirely propped up at this point by loot boxes.
100%.
Their Ultimate Team business, the Ultimate Team cards, is literally the one thing that is keeping that company afloat.
I think it makes $800 million, right?
About $1 billion a year at this point,
sure.
Right? So they make money from other stuff, don't get me wrong. But the Ultimate Team business, plus their growing mobile business, is really what keeps them going. It's all based on pay-to-win microtransactions and loot boxes, okay? If you were to implement this sort of thing, FIFA is not designed for kids, but it has a very strong appeal to kids. Sure. And I think that a law like this would likely affect a game like FIFA. And at that point, you're like, okay, well, what does this practically mean for people? You do see countries like Belgium, which have already banned loot boxes. And it's working fine. The world keeps spinning. Games keep getting released in Belgium. They just don't have the bullshit microtransactions associated with them. So, I guess this is complicated because I agree with a sort of a libertarian perspective, which is I don't think governments should have to do this sort of stuff. And I like the idea that government doesn't get involved. At the same time, this is a really bullshit tactic that is aiming to exploit people's, compulsive behavior, gambling addiction. So I don't have any problem with them intervening here because clearly the industry itself is just greedy and it's going to ride this as much as it can.
Look, I think that we've seen over the last few years that the industry is trying to push it to the limits. And I understand that we've seen a lot of backlash in terms of Reddit, YouTube, whatever. A lot of people not buying the game. A lot of reputation, in terms of publishing houses that have just been destroyed or damaged severely, like EA or Bethesda, for instance. Like all these things, the community is hitting back at this. But the bottom line is, I think that any sort of government regulation that just makes sure that there is a certain quality that is produced for the actual consumer can be a very good thing. Even if we were to say, for instance, you have to know what you're getting in the loot box. You know exactly what the baseline of that loot box percentage is for the best thing. Instead of being 0.1%, it has to be at least 3%. Or, there's addiction and parental locks in every single game that comes out. I know there's very small examples, but things like that become a must in a game, I think can maybe dramatically change the industry and how they make games.
The problem is that most games already have those two things that you're talking about. And I guess the slippery slope argument here is very real, which is like, where does it end with regards to governments getting involved in this sort of stuff, And I, for example, with Warframe, right? Warframe has boosters that you can buy to increase your farming efficiency. Now, under one definition, you might call that pay to win, because it's like giving you an advantage in the game that you are paying real money for. So would a law like this then obviously affect a game like Warframe? Because that's also has a kid market. That game is playable by kids. So at that point, I'd be like, well, hang on, I've got a problem with that because I like Warframe as a game. It monetizes in a way that I consider to be fair. It's very transparent. But would it have to change that approach? And would the financial sustainability of Digital Extremes be affected because of that? You know what I mean?
I understand that there'll be a shake-up. I understand
there'll be
that.
Lots of changes, lots of risks, lots of shake-up.
Yeah, look, I understand that a free-to-play model is very separate to a game that you've paid full price for. If we see a shake-up in this industry to a point where they go, well, we can't make money off these loot boxes, we can't make money off pay-to-win, it might just come back to how games used to be in the 90s and early 2000s. It's like, what is the quality of this game? How well will it sell based on the quality and how well it is received by the community? Yeah. Now, I think that this whole, EA, for instance, it does rely on a certain type of person, like the FIFA player that just jumps on ever so often, but loves the game so much, they're happy to spend, a bit of money on microtransactions. At the same time, EA is hated in the hardcore community. But as I said, it might get back to a stage where they need to actually make quality games, and that's what pushes sales.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think that as hesitant as I am about this, I'm okay with going a few steps forward on the journey, because I do believe that it needs to be something to change the way that games companies are building themselves right now. They are leveraged so deep into gambling-based mechanics. It has to eventually topple. You cannot build an industry like this, with this much scale, with this much money involved, so many times bigger than the movie industry, for example, and build most of that on the idea that you are selling something to your consumer, but they don't know what it is. They're essentially gambling for the things that they want. Any industry that's building itself on those foundations is building itself on sand. You know?
Exactly, I agree.
So I'm okay with going a few steps forward, but at the same time, I definitely recognize the risk. Anyone in the comment section that says government this, government that, I hear you, and I definitely agree with you in part, because it is a risky, slippery slope where who knows where government will stop, who knows if they'll get it right, who knows what kind of studios will be unfairly affected, but something needs to happen in this space, because right now, this whole bullshit, gambling, predatory, all this crap, it's endemic. You know?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think the bottom line is here, it's about knowing what product you're actually purchasing. And at the moment, a lot of games, you don't know what you're getting.
Correct.
You don't know what is in here. You don't exactly know. It is completely built around let's purchase. Make you purchase a product, and then you actually have to purchase 70% of the product in other loot boxes, other pay-to-win bullshit.
And I think the discussion about scale is so important, because you could give so many examples of like, well, what about trading cards and Pokemon cards and whatever else? Yeah, we get that, fine. But when you start ramping things up to scale, when you start talking about billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of players, the games industry is the #1 form of entertainment in the world right now. When you're operating at that scale, it raises new questions. You can't compare Candy Crush to baseball cards from the 1950s.
Sure.
Times have changed, things have moved on, buying patterns have changed, all that sort of stuff. So you got to have a conversation about where are we at right now, and are we really happy with where things are? And I don't think most people are happy. So, look, I welcome the Senator's move. I think it's good and interesting. We will have to see the detail and how it gets implemented. This obviously will be a big story that we'll continue to cover because there's a lot of devil in the detail.
Yeah.
But overall, though, I'm happy to see that there's some positive moves happening here.
I'm looking forward to Chris Lee weighing in on this. Okay,
Yes.
Chris Lee, where are you, man? We'll do another interview with you.
We will.
We're looking forward to it.
See you guys.
Rewind time, everybody.